guys, this is Heather. I am super excited today because I have a good friend and pressure cooking expert on with me today, JL Fields. I've been following her stuff for a long time now. She always posts fantastic recipes, and she very often posts recipes that are to do with pressure cooking. And it's fantastic because she always posts about how you can cook beans and rice in minutes, which is something that I would love to be able to do more often. And I actually bought a pressure cooker a few months ago. It's an old school style one, and I haven't used it very much, so I'm super excited to have JL on today to answer my questions and your questions. I asked for some in advance, so I've got a huge list of questions to pepper JL with. So anyway, welcome JL, and JL has a new cookbook out, so if you hold that up, everybody, you have a chance to win this fabulous cookbook today.
Here it is, and Heather, you know I love you. I'm such a huge fan, and I can't believe we've been planning this for months and months, and I'm so excited that we're finally talking, and here's my baby. That beautiful photo is from Kate Lewis, a terrific vegan food photographer and stylist, and thanks, Heather, for having me here. I'm really excited to answer your questions.
Excellent. I am so excited that you wrote this book because JL does have a ton of amazing pressure cooking recipes on her website, and so I'm sure that that book is chock full of amazing recipes plus info, I'm pretty sure. So one of you lucky people is going to win that book. If you look underneath this video, there's a link for the giveaway. So after this video, go ahead and go enter to win JL's newest cookbook. She's also the co-author of Vegan for Women with Ginny Messina, which is another fantastic book. But today we're going to focus on the pressure cooking. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
Okay. So the first questions I'm going to talk about are what type of pressure cookers are the best. So obviously there are a ton out there. Mine is this super old school. The brand name is Hawkins. I got it used to give it a try at first. But okay, first question from Ricky. What's the best size and brand of pressure cooker to buy for an absolute newbie?
Well, it's a good question, and you know, I know you know that I'm actually right now on a book tour with vegan pressure cooking, and I'm actually, the way I set up the tour was to do a series of vegan pressure cooking 101 classes, so I could feel like I could do this in my sleep. But the thing is, there are a lot of variables, so I always want to say, in the interest of full disclosure, that my book tour is sponsored by Fagor America, and Fagor does make pressure cookers, both stovetop, and they make electric, and they make a multi-cooker. But I also like to remind people that the reason they are my sponsor is because I was already using Fagor stovetop pressure cookers. And I reached out to them a year ago when I signed the contract with Fairwinds, and I said, listen, I use you guys. Let's work together so that we can, you know, spread the pressure cooking love. So I say that to say I actually feel for a stovetop pressure cooker, I love the Fagor. I'm laughing when you hold up your pressure cooker, and I do not mean to diss anybody at all.
Hey now.
No, and I'm being nice. I'm not dissing you. I'm not dissing the maker. I will tell you, I actually have experience with that pressure cooker because my aunt bought one. I think she said the same thing. She got it like at a garage sale or something, and it was like $25. And I was visiting her in Florida last year, and there was no manual or anything, and I looked at this thing and I'm like, oh my gosh, and we made it work, and we made some wonderful lentils, and when I say we, I mean me, and she never touched it again. So truthfully, if she wants to use a pressure cooker, that's not the pressure cooker for her to use. I'm actually going to be in Florida at the end of the month doing a cooking, well, I'm going to be on vacation, so I'm going to see my family, and I'm going to be doing a cooking demo in the Melbourne, Florida area, and I'm going out to buy her a Fagor at a Bed Bath & Beyond so that she will have a pressure cooker she actually uses. So, but regardless, what I say is, you know, there are all kinds of different ones. This is actually an old school pressure cooker, and it's made by Presto. A friend of mine, Bonnie Goodman in Montana, sent it to me as a gift after I just did my tour there. And this has the old-fashioned jiggly top, but Presto still makes pressure cookers that have a more modern jiggly top, and you can get them in 4, 6, and 8 quarts. and they're kind of on the lower end. Fagor makes stovetops, obviously. This is the one I use all the time. This is actually a 4-quart. And the newer pressure cookers, which are also called second generation, they just have safety features that are involved now. Like there's actually a lever to lock this in place. There's a valve, you can put it on pressure or steam. And so for some people who are scared of pressure cookers, I really recommend the newer second generation stovetop pressure cookers that have lots of features on it for safety perspective. But a lot of people are also using electric pressure cookers. I actually started, my first electric pressure cooker was an Instant Pot 3-in-1, which is a rice cooker, slow cooker, and a pressure cooker. And they're, people are cuckoo about these devices on Facebook, tons of great pages for them. And Fagor makes one as well. The price point is about $30 less, and I use that one on my book tour, and I love it equally. So when it comes to size, I always say if it's a family of 6 or more, you're going to want an 8-quart pressure cooker, if not a 10-quart. But if you're someone like me and my husband, it's just the 2 of us, a 6-quart does just fine. But truth be told, since this is now my job, I have 7 pressure cookers, and they range in size from 4 to 10.
You're like an addict.
Well, I am like an addict. I always say that, when you come into my house on a Saturday or Sunday, I'm going to have at least 1 electric pressure cooker going and a couple on the stovetop, and I'm going to be making my food for the week. I do my bulk cooking with it, which is why I think people who follow a plant-based diet and are new to it would really find a pressure cooker an essential tool, because it really helps you make whole foods quickly. But I want to feel like I answered Ricky's question. So what I would say is there are lots of brands out there. Go to Amazon and look at some of the reviews. People are very honest about how they feel about different appliances. And I find that the size really does come to sort of family size. And if you're like somewhere stuck in the middle and you can't determine it, a 6-quart is a really nice size of a pressure cooker to have.
Okay. I definitely find this one too small for most of my needs.
Yeah, I would too, if I were you.
It'll do like 1 batch of beans. But the reason I got it is because I started thinking about the electricity usage of cooking beans for 3 hours, and I thought to myself, well, God, as an environmentally minded person, I need to get one of these.
Yeah.
So, but the trouble is I can only do 1 batch at once, so it kind of doesn't really work for me. So I am looking for one, so that'll be helpful. 6-quart for someone like me, or 8 to 10-quart for a family. And I got a lot of questions about the Instapot and about electric versus stovetop pressure cookers. So what do you put? What would be the difference for you between an electric and a stovetop?
In a lot of ways, I think it's about lifestyle. And what I mean by that is, I started with an electric pressure cooker. I started using stovetop pressure cookers, and it wasn't until I started writing my book that I bought an electric pressure cooker, because I wanted to make sure that my recipes translated well. And I knew that I would have recipe testers using them. And so I'm just going to give you an example of how I use them, because I think that will help people see how the different ways to do it. So, for instance, this morning I'm running around like a crazy person because I got home late last night and I have to get to the office because I'm going to see my lovely Heather here. And so I want steel cut oats really quickly, and I don't want to have to tend to it. I put the steel cut oats in my electric pressure cooker, put the lid on, set the cooking time, and then I went and I took my shower. I got all of my papers and my computer together to go to the office, and all I had to do was go to my pressure cooker, open the lid when the pressure came down, and eat my oatmeal, eat my breakfast. Now, that's a really convenient thing to do. The modern day electric pressure cooker, the 3-in-1 multi-cookers, also have timers on them. Some of them do. So if you wanted something to start cooking tonight, like a 1-pot meal or rice, you could actually set it in the same way that we've been setting our slow cookers for many years now. So it's very user-friendly. I also find it to be the really nice option for people who are simply terrified of pressure cookers. And let me just say, hopefully by the end of this, people will no longer be terrified. But I've talked to lots of people in my classes who do still feel really nervous, and I show them, like, I can't even open that electric multi-cooker until the pressure's down. So so for the people who either identify as super terrified or really, I had this sweet young man in Cincinnati come up to me on Saturday to say, listen, I lose track of time and things, and I just don't pay attention to details. And so, what do you think? And I'm like, dude, get get an electric pressure cooker. Get one that's gonna stop working, and you don't have to worry about it. Now, I love the stovetop pressure cooker. I like it because I feel like I have a little bit more control. If I forgot to put beans in when I'm making a bean dish, and I'm not going to lie, that's happened on more than one occasion, I can really quickly bring it down from pressure, because I don't know if you know, but one of the ways you do a quick release of pressure cooking is if this were on my stovetop and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm making beans, and I forgot beans, but the pressure has already started to come up, this yellow button has popped up, I just hold this under a running stream of cold water and have the water hit right here. It stays away from the valve, and the pressure comes down like that. I open the lid and I put my beans in, and I get going again. Of course, you can do that with the electric pressure cooker. You just have it's a little bit, it happens more quickly with the stovetop. There's a little bit more precision with it. And then personally, I do pressure cook vegetables, and I find that I prefer to pressure cook my vegetables in a stovetop versus electric, because again, the really quick release that I can do with cold water helps me avoid kind of the mushiness. I'm not a mushy vegetable fan. I like some crispness even after I've cooked it. So I think it goes to convenience. Also price point. I mean, you can really get a nice multi-cooker now. The Fagor you can get from anywhere from $89 to $99, the Instant Pot. Geez, yesterday they had a sale on Amazon for $99, but usually it's around $130. So if you're going to spend that much money and get a device that's also a rice cooker and a slow cooker, that's pretty nice, because I like, a stovetop like this can be anywhere from $60 to $80. And so you want to think about price, you want to think about how much time you want to spend in the kitchen, how much work you want the device to do on your behalf. Those are factors I would take into consideration.
Okay. About the electric pressure cooker, I had no idea that it was like a rice cooker in that it times things for you and does all the pressure stuff. So you really just set it and forget it kind of thing. Is that right?
You can. It really does depend upon the device, and so you'll want to, before you purchase it, read the manual or read the description of it to see. But yeah, I mean, even yeah, I mean, some of them now are even Bluetooth enabled, and you can like put precision time. Oh yeah. So there's all kinds of interesting stuff. But let me also say the other thing about the electric pressure cooker that people should take into consideration, and I feel like some of these things, if people are completely new to pressure cooking, might not make 100% sense right now, but by the time we're done talking it might. But I'm going to talk a little bit about high and low pressure, because electric pressure cookers, I say if you're going to buy an electric pressure cooker, there are a couple things you want to make sure they have. You want to make sure that they have a brown or a saute function on them to allow you to do some advanced, like if you're making a recipe that calls for onions and garlic and carrot to be sauteed a little bit in some olive oil or some vegetable broth in advance. You also probably got a pressure cooker because you want a one-pot meal, so why wouldn't you want to do all of that in one pot? So if your electric pressure cooker doesn't have that option, you're going to be doing that in a skillet and then transferring it to the pot. So most of them come with a brown or a saute function, and I think you want to look for that. And the other thing you want to look for is a high or low pressure option. I had my first electric multi-cooker did not have that. It only cooked at high pressure. And now the Fagor multi-cooker that I use and the newer Instant Pots have a high or low. You usually cook beans and grains on high pressure, and you typically will use cook vegetables on a low pressure. So if your electric pressure cooker doesn't have those two options, it changes some of your cooking flexibility. So that's something else to keep in mind.
Okay, good to know. I would love to talk more on the pressure cookers specifically, but I do have a ton more questions that would be really good to get into. Is there more info in your book about pressure cooking brands?
Yeah, well, what I really talk about in my book are things that you want your pressure cooker to do. I do give, in the back I have a resource section, and I recommend a couple of Prestos and a couple of Fagors, and really what I do in the intro is I talk about how pressure cookers work and why you would want to use them. And I think that as you read that and you begin to understand how you want to use your pressure cooker, it will help you decide which one is going to be best for you.
Okay, Cool. So I do want to get into how to use the pressure cooker,
Okay.
but before we talk about that, I want to motivate people to want to use their pressure cookers. So, what is your favorite pressure cooker meal?
Oh, you know what? It changes so often, but it's funny. I should be tired of this by now. So on this book tour, I'm pretty much doing the same recipes over and over again because it just makes it easy to do. But it's also because I feel like the meal that I make, folks, is a little bit of vegan activism because I do want to say, you know, my book is called Vegan Pressure Cooking for a reason. I'm a vegan. And I know that lots of people are plant-based and don't necessarily use the word vegan. That's great. I don't care. I don't care what anyone's label is. You know, labels are not important to me. Helping change the world for animals and the environment and for humans is what's important to me. And so I only say that to say that in my classes, what I'm discovering is that probably 80% of the people who come are not vegan at all or even plant-based, but they just are genuinely interested in either learning how to cook more plant-based meals, or they just want to learn how to use the pressure cooker. So since I think food can be activism, I try to do something that I think is particularly yummy for the non-vegans in the crowd. And so I have this recipe called umami anasazi beans. And so I soak overnight anasazi beans, which can also be replaced with pinto beans. And in front of them during a demo, I'm able to caramelize onion, put my soaked beans in with lots of beef-style vegan broth, paprika, liquid smoke, and they cook in 7 minutes. And it blows people's minds. And if I didn't soak them, so they'd cook in like, say, 15 to 18 minutes. But most people who have been cooking beans, like you said, for 3 hours, and I live at elevation. I'm in Colorado Springs right now where I'm at 6,000 feet. And so there are people here who've never wanted to cook beans because we're talking hours and hours. And the pressure cooker really makes that difference. And while those delicious, oh, and those beans also have shiitake mushrooms in them, so that's kind of the ham and beans experience, but done completely plant-based, very flavorful and filled with umami foods. And then at the same time, in another pressure cooker, I'm making mushroom rice, which is simply shiitake mushrooms, brown rice, and then slightly seasoned with a tamari sauce at the end. And I put those two together, and people are able to see brown rice cook in 22 minutes, not 40, and see beans cook in less than 10 minutes. And I think that really, like, you should just see their faces. And to me, that is why pressure cooking, because if we're eating a plant-based diet, if you're eating a whole foods plant-based diet or a vegan diet, we know we want to eat vegetables and fruits, legumes and grains, and nuts and seeds. Well, those grains and those legumes are going to cook like that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you just answered probably about 5 questions that I had on my list, like how long does it take to cook beans, how long does it take to cook grains, and how long does it take to cook vegetables. And for anyone who isn't familiar with the word umami, that's another word for the savory flavors. So if you think of sweet, sour, savory is umami, which, as she was mentioning, the smoke flavor and the smoked paprika, like, that sounds amazing. So
Thank you.
I think you're doing a fantastic job.
I'd like to expound on that umami a little bit too, and it's actually, it comes from Japanese culinary cuisine and literally translated means meatiness.
Ooh.
And Jenny Messina, my co-author of Vegan for Her, wrote a really great blog post, I think a couple of years ago, asking, is umami the secret ingredient to vegan activism? Because when you start to think meatiness without the meat, you up your game on how you're cooking. And you start to think about, okay, what kind of umami element, what kind of sense of satiety, a smell, aroma, or flavor will remind one of a meatiness so that they feel satisfied and can say, oh, I would eat this. I don't need to eat meat in order to do that. And so the umami foods can be mushrooms and ripe tomatoes and fermented foods. And the methods of cooking umami are caramelizing and roasting and braising. So it really makes vegan cooking fun because we get to challenge ourselves on how to bring this aroma and taste and flavor to a meal that would please anybody regardless of what label they use.
Yeah, and that reminds me of Colleen Patrick Goudreau's, I don't know what to call it, not a theory, but a presentation of the word meat, as the original definition of meat was food as opposed to drink. So using meatiness in a vegan context is still totally legit, and I love that concept of bringing umami and savory and wonderful rich flavors to people to satisfy that part of their taste. So well
Yeah.
done.
Thanks, sister.
Okay, so let us go into the little practical aspect of pressure cooking. So quick recap of steps and method of what you're looking for when you pressure cook. So you put your food in the pressure cooker, and then what?
Okay. Yeah, let's just pretend we're starting to cook something, and then I'll give you little tricks along the way. I wish I had my little induction cooker here. I could try to make something. I had to come to my office because my cable company is throttling my internet at home. I would have loved a bit of my kitchen today. So here's a little trick. So first off, you can put a whole bunch of things in your pressure cooker. We're going to lock our lid in place. We're going to do a few things that I'll talk you through in a minute. But a little cheater's trick. If you want your pressure cooker to come up to pressure more quickly, when you add a saute function to something that you're making, and if you're somebody who uses extra virgin olive oil or avocado oil, I do, or if you're somebody who prefers vegetable broth or water, will all work. To get some things sauteing in advance, you get your pressure cooker going and you get some heat in there, and that can bring your pressure cooker up to pressure more quickly. And I say that to say that sometimes I make vegetable scrap broth where I have a bunch of veggie scraps that have been in the freezer, and I have them maybe thawed out, maybe not, in my sink. And I've tried to, I've run warm water over them, but then I add them into the pressure cooker. And it's going to take a really long time to come to pressure because I'm essentially trying to heat up cold water and cold vegetables. And so that might take a little bit more time. And so some people think they read a recipe and they're like, oh, this only takes 8 minutes. This took a lot longer than that. And that is true. When you're reading a recipe for pressure cooking, it's going to tell you how long to cook something, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 15 minutes. But some things have to happen first, like coming to pressure. So now back to your question. We're going to make my umami anasazi beans. So on the stovetop in my pressure cooker, I heat up a little oil, and I add a whole bunch of half-moon sliced onions and a little pinch of sugar because I want to do a fake caramelization. I'm a very lazy cook. That's the other reason I pressure cook. I want it done quickly, and I want to look like it was kind of fancy, but not really, because that's not my thing. I'm not a trained chef. That's not what I do. So I'm caramelizing my onions. They're getting nice and brown, and then I add my broth in, and I add my beans in, and I'm doing all of this on sort of a medium-high heat. Then I'm going to do what they call locking your lid in place. So I set my my pressure cookers on the stovetop. I put the lid on, and I just want you to listen, and hopefully you can hear this. You hear it lock into place. And there's a lever here, and I'll do that again. There's a lever. And so the lever pushes up, and now I'm ready to roll. Now,
can I just show you mine?
Yeah, because I know what yours is going to do.
This is how I lock.
Yep.
I put this thing over here.
Yep. Perfect. And thanks for showing that. And then this old Presto one doesn't have that. So this old Presto, this retro one, you just close it. So I can tell you I'm not using this on my stovetop. But anyway, it's cute. I'm going to use it for a planter. So anyway, now my food is in. My lid is locked in place. And now I have the heat adjusted on kind of like a medium-high because I want to bring the pressure cooker to pressure. And so I'm not starting to count the cooking time yet. I'm waiting for it to happen. This is when you need to get to know your pressure cooker, whether through reading the manual or through testing it yourself. You want to know what pressure looks like and what it sounds like on your device. So if I were using this one, pressure is going to be a sound. It's going to be a subtle sound, and there's going to be some steam that starts to stream through, and that's how I know I've achieved pressure. Now my job with the stovetop is to reduce heat just enough to maintain that pressure without losing pressure. And so I use an electric stovetop. I am at 8.0 to get it to pressure. I maintain it at somewhere between 2.6 and 2.8. That's my stove with my pressure cooker. Yours is going to be different. And if you have a gas stove, you can adjust and visually see with the flame how that works. Now I start counting. So I've reduced the pressure, and now I'm counting for 8 minutes. When 8 minutes comes up, I need to know from the recipe, am I doing a quick release or am I doing a natural release? If it's a natural release and I'm on the stovetop, I simply move this to an unheated burner or take it off and set it on a counter, and I leave it alone until pressure comes down. That's a natural release. The quick release is what I showed you earlier. We hold it under running cold water, not hitting the valve. It's just hitting the lid or the side of the pressure cooker. And as soon as this little button pops down and I can move this lever and it shows me that no steam is coming out, now I can open it, and I always want to open it away from me. So I would go like, well, I'm not going to open it at all. Like that, away from me. So I don't get a surprise. If I go like this, I could get a surprise of steam in my face. So that's essentially how it does. Now, going back to, do I want electric or do I want stovetop? The difference here is, we get this question a lot on some of the groups on Facebook for people who are using the multi-cookers, is they'll read our, those of us who write recipes for pressure cooking. Susan Voisin from Fat Free Vegan has some really delicious recipes. Of course, Jill Nusinow from the New Fast Food. So we write these recipes so that anyone can use them. So if it's a stovetop, you do exactly what I just said. If it's electric, you don't have to increase and then decrease the heat. You just, the pressure cooker does it for you. So when you set it and you say, I want it to cook for 22 minutes, it doesn't start counting those 22 minutes on that electric pressure cooker until pressure has been achieved. Then it counts the 22. Where you jump into play is if you're choosing a quick release or a natural release. If it's a natural release, you just turn off your electric device when the 22 minutes are up and you wait. If it's a quick release, there is a valve on the top that you just dampen a washcloth or a towel, toss it on top of that valve, move the lever, and then you're going to hear steam, and that's fine, that's totally normal, and that's a quick release. So that's kind of in a nutshell the process.
Okay, perfect. Now, is there typical things that you would do natural release versus quick release? Like you said, quick release usually for vegetables and maybe grains and beans are more natural release?
That's exactly right. So I almost always cook my grains and beans on a high pressure and use a natural release. I almost always cook my vegetables on a low pressure and use a quick release. And there are some quick cooking grains that I choose to do a quick release, such as oatmeal or steel cut oats, or if I'm making risotto and using arborio rice. I actually have a rice pudding recipe in which I use arborio rice, so it's kind of like risotto, but sweet and desserty and yummy. It's 7 minutes, and I use a quick release for that because I want the rice to stop cooking right away. So those are some of the variables.
Perfect. That answers a question from Patrick and Wendy, who both asked about sweet and breakfast recipes. So is it okay to put sugary foods or even just like sugar or maple syrup in the pressure cooker? Is that going to cause any problem?
I tend to use those after cooking. I tend to season with them after. If I'm making a steel cut oat, I will make it with water. If I'm making a savory steel cut oat, I actually will make it with vegetable broth, and then I season it with nutritional yeast and some pumpkin seeds or something after, because I like a savory breakfast myself. But for a sweet steel cut oats, I put some fresh fruit or some fresher frozen fruit in with the oats. Sometimes I use almond milk, sometimes I use water, and then at the end, after I've removed the lid, I'll stir in maybe some maple syrup, some ground flaxseed, something like that. And actually, there are some fun desserts. I don't really have a sweet tooth, and I know that that's probably surprising for people who think they have me figured out, because I'm not a skinny vegan and proudly have a website called Stop Chasing Skinny. That doesn't mean I sit around and eat Oreos. I just sit around and eat a lot of yummy savory foods. And sorry, I don't know if everyone can hear that, but I'm going to shut this off for a minute because can you still hear me, Heather?
Yep.
Okay, good. I had a little problem with my earphones. So I just the other night in Cincinnati made a full meal for students in my class at a Unitarian church. And so we had the umami anasazi beans over mushroom rice, a big bowl for everybody, massaged kale salad. And I wanted a little dessert, but I also didn't want to spend a lot of time because we needed things to wrap up. So I just chopped up some apples and tossed them in the pressure cooker with a little bit of water, a pinch of sugar, and some crystallized ginger, and cooked it at pressure for 3 minutes. and then just lightly mashed it afterwards and served it as sort of a chunky applesauce. And so 3-minute dessert, hello, and it started with a whole food, which yay me.
That's awesome. That sounds phenomenal.
Yeah.
Wish I was there.
I do too.
Okay. Another question. What do you cook in a pressure cooker? Cook beans and grains in a stovetop pressure cooker, which, based on what you've already said, I don't think is right.
Okay, so ask it again because it froze up on that first part. Sorry.
Oh, okay, I think I froze. Okay, so I had people asking, what can you not cook in a pressure cooker? And someone mentioned not being able to cook beans and grains in a stovetop.
Oh, no, you absolutely can do beans and grains on the stovetop. Some people have a harder time with grains. Like, I've seen some of the older books that say to, like, put grains in a bowl or something, and I'm not even commenting on that. I don't want to confuse anyone. I don't even know what that means. I make grains in my pressure cooker, stovetop and electric, and I will say, you know, kind of going back to the stovetop versus electric, I find that I tend to defer to my electric pressure cooker when I'm making rice. Now, the funny thing is, it's also a rice cooker, and I've never used the rice cooker function. I just hit pressure cooker for 22 minutes for brown rice, and I'm done.
Yeah, well, why would you wait if you don't have to, right?
Yeah, well, and I don't even know how long it would take for rice cooker, but that's not why I got the device. It wasn't for the slow or the rice cooker. I got it for the pressure cooker. But no, beans and grains cook up beautifully in the pressure cooker. There are some foods that can be tricky in the pressure cooker. Like some manuals will say not to cook oatmeal in the pressure cooker. And I, of course, cook oatmeal in the pressure cooker and steel cut oats. I do say that sometimes you really, well, not sometimes, size matters, meaning I'm going to tell you a story. I tell people this during my class, and it's the truth, I'm sad to say. So this used to be my favorite pressure cooker, this 4-quart. It still is, but I used to use it for a lot of things, and I travel with it because, look, it's almost kind of like a skillet. It's very shallow, and I took it to a condo in Breckenridge. Some friends invited us up, and I felt like I should sing for my dinner. You know, I cooked all of the meals pretty much in this pressure cooker. And then I tried to make oatmeal for 4 of us in this shallow 4-quart pressure cooker. Yeah, that was not a good idea. So when I did my quick release, not only did I release the steam from the pressure cooker, but I released the foam that comes from oatmeal. So this is when I like to remind people the max line is there for a reason. Inside most pressure cookers, actually look inside yours, Heather, because I wonder if yours does. There should be a line that says max. I've got one right here. And trust me, I went over the max line. So if you don't have a max line, that's one more reason I would tell you not to use that pressure cooker.
Yeah, I don't have a max line. I think I'm going to be with you in making this into a planter.
Yeah. Oh, that would be a great planter. That's why I want to decorate my whole place with like old retro pressure cookers and use it for different. But anyway, so oatmeal, you just have to, you know, this just kind of goes back to watch, you know, look at the max line and make sure that you're heating the max line. You know, don't go over that with your foods. There are some foods, like people used to think they had to use oil whenever they made beans. And it wasn't oil for flavor, it was oil to avoid foaming because people were used to seeing foam come up on beans when they were cooking them on the stovetop. But you know, I use a nice size pressure cooker. I use 6 or 8 quart, and I'm rarely making over a pound of dry beans. And so I'm not getting anywhere near the max line. Some beans do have, or legumes, have some skins that will come off. And so where the caution comes is if they come off, they could get lodged up into this, I don't know if you can hear it,
yeah.
The valve that's going to pop up and we're at pressure. So obviously we want to avoid foods getting lodged, and so that's why you heat the max line. That's why you kind of think about what you're cooking. Green peas, I love green peas. I love cooking dry green peas, and a lot of skin comes off. And I really, really wanted to make a soy milk recipe for this book because I love a soybean. And I did not have good luck with soybeans because so much of the skin came off and foamed. So I would say when you're thinking about experimenting with different things to make in the pressure cooker, read up about them and just find out, is this something that does have a loose skin, like a fava bean or maybe a lima bean. But there isn't really anything that I can think of that I wouldn't cook in. Oh, except pasta. Pasta doesn't cook up very well. I mean, a lot of times we think, well, we look at a box and it says cook for 8 minutes, so I want to make this in the pressure cooker. And I have really mixed results, but I will say I have one recipe in the book called Soy Curl Mac and Cheese. And I actually use a spelt pasta, which is super, super hearty. And I think that's why it holds up well in this. And then I only cook it for 5 minutes with the soy curls. And then at the end, you have this yummy, cheesy soy curl mac and cheese. So there are some foods that, you know, you want to experiment with. Soba noodles, which cook up really quickly on the stovetop anyway without a pressure cooker. I've tried, and sometimes they're perfect and sometimes they're 100% mush.
Yeah, I could see that with pasta. So I can see what you're saying with the spelt pasta, and also if you're making something like a mac and cheese, you want that to be kind of mushy and gooey and yummy anyway.
Yeah.
That brings me to, I'll make this the last question, about soggy food. So a lot of people mentioned having soggy grains and soggy vegetables. Nobody mentioned soggy beans, but what do you do to make sure that things aren't soggy? Is it about the ratio of water that you put in there to begin with, or is it something in the cooking method?
It's probably a little bit of both, and it's going to be for different reasons. So, so with grains, you know, most cookbooks, vegan pressure cooking cookbooks, come with a chart, and that is a chart based on that particular author's experience with how they cooked beans. So here, for example, here it's going to give you a bean chart. Wait, oh, there's a kitty cat.
Say hi to JL.
Hi, sweetheart. I'm a crazy cat lady. Aw, I'm so jealous. I wish my 2 cats were here. So take a look at the pressure, look at the cooking chart in whichever book you're using. And there are some online as well. There's a great website, hippressurecooking.com. It's not a vegan website, but it's a really solid and wonderful pressure cooking website. And Laura has some great charts there too. So when it comes to grains, most of these charts are going to give you a ratio. And so in this particular one, anytime it lists a grain, always assume that it's 1 cup. This is from my book. 1 cup of the grain, and then it's going to tell you how much liquid. So for a cup of pearled barley, it's 2 cups of liquid. For a cup of polenta, it's 4 cups of liquid. So in grains, it's actually pretty precise. You want the right ratio. Now vegetables, you're going to look at cooking times. Asparagus, 2 minutes. So if you accidentally did 3 minutes, or if you did 2 minutes and didn't do a cook release, mush. And then the other thing is, how did you cook it? Did you cook it in water? Some people think about boiling vegetables, and so they throw their vegetables in. And you actually usually are going to make your vegetables in a steam basket. So you're going to have some type of trivet in the pressure cooker. Usually I'll put like about a cup of water on the bottom, and I heat that up first, and then in a basket I put my vegetables. And because I've heated it up first, that means it's going to come to pressure much more quickly, which means I can do a little bit more precision cooking. It's going to be faster all around. So those are things that you want to pay attention to. Now I will say the one vegetable that I like to toss right in the water, or actually vegetable broth, are potatoes, because I love mashed potatoes. Not going to lie. I like sweet mashed potatoes. I like yams mashed. I like russet. I like fingerling. I like butters potatoes. I like them all. If you heat up about a half a cup, well, it depends on how many potatoes you're putting in, but just heat up a little vegetable broth on the bottom and toss those potatoes right into it. And sometimes I saute some onion and garlic in that vegetable broth, then put the potatoes in, directly in, not on a steam basket. And then I cook on pressure for about 5 or 6 minutes. When I remove that lid, I use a potato masher and just put in a little bit of earth balance, a little salt and pepper, and I have mashed potatoes that cooked up in under 10 minutes. So that is a time that I do want them to get mushy.
That's amazing. I'm not a huge potato fan, just personally. I love mashed sweet potatoes, but you just made that sound so good that I actually feel like eating mashed potatoes right now.
Yay. Or try other root veggies that you like. I make mashed carrots. I take carrots and parsnips and do the exact same thing, and I mash them. So it's a fun thing to do with root veggies.
Awesome. All right. Well, I have taken up lots of your time today, and I really appreciate you taking the time in the middle of your amazing book tour to chat with me about pressure cooking and share your wisdom. So reminder to everybody watching, you can win a copy of JL's new book, Vegan Pressure Cooking, because it'll tell you a lot more than what we went into, and it'll give you a ton of recipes. And I think, are the 2 recipes that you mentioned at the beginning in the book, the umami anasazi beans and the mushroom rice dish?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, well, JL, thank you so, so much. Hold up your cookbook for
Oh,
everybody
okay,
again so they
thanks.
get excited about trying to win it.
Everybody, if you want to know if I'm coming to your community, go to veganpressurecooking.com, which will actually take you into my website. And I have a list of all the places I'm going. Next up is Portland, Oregon, Vancouver, Washington, New Rochelle, New York, and the New York City Veg Fest. So check me out at veganpressurecooking.com. And Heather, I adore you. I thank you. You are so wonderful.
Aw, I feel exactly the same way. Thank you so, so much for being here, and we'll have to talk again soon.
Good. Mwah.
Okay, bye!
Bye.